You know, for the past 2 decades now, we have basically been living in this superhero golden age, as some like to call it. Sure, before the 2000s, you had your classic superheroes appearing in various comic books, sometimes showing up during Saturday morning cartoons, and occasionally some studio trying to start a massive franchise out of it. That does start out promising, but eventually it just tires out and is rebooted years later. It's pretty clear that during this time, superhero movies were always hit and misses. Sure, you had your classics that are still remembered today, but you also have a fair portion of superhero movies that have just been forgotten about. Even Marvel, who are huge now, turning out film after film, once just like every other company, just trying to bring out a film. And some of those movies were, well, less than good. But in the last 20 years or so, superhero movies have been top of the box office, and one of the films that is to thank for this change in direction is the original Spider-Man movie in 2002. The success of this film really did prove that superhero films could be, well, really good, and launched its own trilogy and multiple successful films from various studios. But here we are, in 2021, where it seems like Marvel is releasing new content everywhere you look, and from my experience, it is kind of hard to keep up. Now, Marvel have been a key player in this when it comes to releasing new exciting films every year, and since the release of Avengers Endgame in 2019, I didn't really think that there was going to be another film of theirs that was going to reach the same levels of success for years. That was until 1 month ago, when, after many rumours and speculation, Marvel and Sony finally released the trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home. And the internet went insane, as it is revealed that Marvel are certainly going in a direction that people have wanted them to go in for a long time now. Now, if I'm going to be honest, I wasn't actually going to make a video about the trailer, because let's get real, it feels like everyone has made a video about the new trailer, and I felt like everything I was going to talk about has already been discussed many times. So instead, I waited until I finally did think of something that was interesting enough to discuss, but at this point, the trailer's been out for exactly 1 month, and everyone has probably no interest in this anymore. So, fantastic planning on my part. But no, in all seriousness, I'm just going to give my quick thoughts on the trailer as a whole. Overall, I actually think the trailer was a very good tease for what is to come in the film. It's longer than most teasers usually, but I think it does a very good job for setting up the main premise of the movie. My guess is that what we see in the trailer will probably only be really the first 20 minutes or so of the movie, and then towards the end of the trailer will be some scenes scattered around the midway point of the film. Obviously, this is Marvel, and they are very cautious not to give anything away in their trailers before opening weekend. Heck, sometimes not even to their main actors.
So there was a funeral scene. How many of you were who was at the funeral?
This is how bad it is for me. I was told it was a wedding.
So even though I can look deep into the trailer and look at every single little detail, there is a good chance that what is happening on screen is not what will appear in the final film, because as many know, Marvel trailers are usually never what they seem. As far as the premise goes, I do think the stakes are very high compared to the last two films, where he kind of just wanted to save his friends and stop the bad guy. Well, in this film it appears he is messing with the multiverse and his identity, so really stepping it up for Spidey there, aren't they? From the trailer, it looks like Doctor Strange will have a bigger part in this film than I originally thought, as it looks like he's going to be joining Peter on his mission. But again, they only really hint at the first act of the film, so we don't really know too much about this yet. And speaking of Doctor Strange, something is definitely up with this character. This has been mentioned heaps on the internet, if he's being mind-controlled or if it's not actually him. It's up for debate, but yeah, something is definitely off with this character in the trailer. But yeah, they are just my overall thoughts of the trailer. Now, on to characters.
Hello, Peter.
So many Marvel projects that have been released this year have teased in some way the multiverse and this new phase of the MCU. One of them is literally looking at the what-ifs of the Marvel Universe, and Loki was the series that basically did open up the multiverse in its season finale. But it looks like No Way Home will be the film that has to face the consequences of this fallout. From the look of the trailer, it looks like they're bringing back previous Spider-Man villains for the movie, which got me wondering, how are they going to bring all of these villains into the MCU without disrupting previous Spider-Man films? Think about it. A lot of these villains did get redemption arcs in their final moments of their films, so the film can play it one of three ways. One, they simply interrupt a battle scene and suck the villain into the MCU while they are still evil. 2. In the moments before their death or final appearance, they are transported to the MCU, going against their redemption arc. Or 3. The villain that we see is from a completely different universe and not from any of the other previous Spider-Man films. Now, even though all of these villains returning in the third installment could be really cool, it got me thinking of another Spider-Man 3, where they overloaded the film full of villains, and eventually it got too messy and crowded, and ends up being a huge failure that everyone seems to hate. Now, I am sure, at least I'm hoping that that will not be the case with this new film, but from looking at everything in the trailer, I'm not completely sure. This film is rumoured to set up a lot of key elements that will play a vital role going forward in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, due to the fact that it's the first multiverse film, which many of the previous villains returning alongside rumours of other Spider-Man set to make reappearances and setting up this whole new phase. It's a lot to handle for one film, especially when they need to still develop Tom Holland's character. In his two past solo films, the greater MCU always seems like it's in the way of trying to build his character on his own, which I guess is fine, but Tom Holland is a great actor. He can handle the weight of his own solo film by himself without it being interrupted by the Avengers. So I'd love to see Spider-Man No Way Home delve deep into this character and explore different aspects of that. I believe that Spider-Man will be a big part in the MCU moving forward, a bit like how Iron Man was almost the main hero of the Avengers. So I do believe that this film can tell a good story with the multiverse, while also exploring Peter Parker as a character, and if it's done right, I feel like it could be not just a great Spider-Man film, but the first successful, well-received Spider-Man trilogy. Finally, I have hope. Now, as I did mention, this film has a big task ahead of it, being the first multiverse film. So how exactly are they going to do it? Now, Loki has already set the multiverse into action, now we just need to see how everything plays out. With multiple dimensions tampering with the stability of space-time, multiple characters from different realities popping up everywhere, and a whole population being brainwashed, it is a lot to uncover for one film. But I'm excited to see how they will unravel and explore the multiverse in this way, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. So this is my predictions for how No Way Home will explore the multiverse. After the events of Far From Home, with Peter's identity being revealed and impacting both himself and the people around him, trying to set everything right, he reaches out to none other than Doctor Strange, who creates a spell to make everyone forget about Peter's identity as Spider-Man.
The entire world is about to forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Wait, everyone?
This is when the multiverse first comes into play, where instead of Doctor Strange wiping everyone's memories, however, he sends them into a completely different dimension, away from the one that they live in. Instead, into one where Peter Parker isn't even Spider-Man to begin with. The two will think that the spell has worked and go about their day. When Peter does interact with his family and friends, he is quick to realise that the spell has worked, and they are unaware of his identity as Spider-Man. But due to the fact that they have been messing with time, glitching and unfamiliar occurrences start to take place because the two are not supposed to be there in the first place. The timeline does not like this interference and meddling, and the strange things start to unravel due to Peter and Stephen
That feels weird, but I'll allow it.
messing with time. In doing so, the dimension that they have created tries to spit them out and play up due to the interference with realities. My guess is that because they tried to attempt such a dangerous spell, they will then have to face the consequences of this fallout. As I mentioned in my thoughts on the trailer before, Doctor Strange is acting differently, most notably because he let something like this go ahead in the first place. It's irresponsible to attempt something that he knows so little about. This means that this couldn't even be Doctor Strange at all, but rather a Spider-Man villain that ties into the Sinister Six, a group consisting of Spider-Man's past villains. I feel as this could make sense considering we see in the trailer as some make appearances. And I kind of like the idea of Mysterio being behind Doctor Strange, considering he's the reason why Peter has been put into this situation to begin with. I know that Mysterio is dead, but there are countless possibilities why he is alive. Mysterio is a master of illusion, so he could easily come back to mess with Peter once again, and I think that would work out really well. This could easily be Mysterio from another universe who actually has real powers. I know it's a stretch, but it's another spin on the character that hasn't really been seen up until this point. Plus, there have been times in the comics when Mysterio has died but then come back to life in another comic, so it is definitely a possibility if they go this way. Also, Mysterio is one of the founders of this group, so him pulling all of these villains from previous Spider-Man installments and having them fight Peter could be really interesting to see and have a real creative spin on the character. Having new connections to these characters, but through MCU Peter, could be really interesting to see and a new creative concept to explore. It also gives room to have all of these tie-ins with the multiverse, but also leave room for Peter to grow as a character and ensure that the whole movie doesn't feel like one big fan service film that is overcrowded with so many different elements. If it is revealed that Doctor Strange isn't actually him, then Peter is on his own and he has to try and find his way back. I know everyone wants Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to return, and I do think there is a good chance it will happen. It would be great to see them get another chance to reprise their role as Spider-Man, considering that all three actors play the role really differently. It would be cool to see how each one plays off each other, but I doubt that their role in this film will be massive. If anything, it will be more of a passing of the torch situation, where they will come to fight, but not really have a huge part. A bigger role than a cameo, but it's not their film. But it would be nice to see where they ended up. Heck, they might even bring in not just these guys, because Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse introduced all of these other great characters, so maybe they'll bring them in too into this live-action setting. I think it would be really cool to explore that. But the chances are that one of the Spider People will definitely have to die, because with so many Spider People and villains, most likely it's probably going to happen. And speaking of that, one thing is for sure though, MCU Peter will have to face the consequences of the multiverse fallout. Chances are Peter will have to endure a death of someone close to him. My guess is it's probably going to be Aunt May, because she is really the only family that Peter has left. Maybe that's why Peter is wearing a suit here, because he's going to a funeral before it's interrupted by someone. Either way, I feel like he'll have to endure something that will motivate him forward. With finally the real Doctor Strange coming in at the end to set up his new film coming early next year, The Multiverse of Madness, leaving him to try and set everything right, and Peter Parker having to face the consequences of his actions. And in terms of the trailer, that's about it. I'm glad they don't give too much away here, because I'd love for them to keep some secrets and reveals for the film, and nothing is going to be hidden in plain sight in the trailer. That would be way too easy. I mean, a few months ago, everyone thought that WandaVision would set up the multiverse, and well, it didn't. From what we can see in the trailer, my guess is that this is only going to be the first 45 minutes of the film at least, because there is a reason why they've left so long to release a trailer, because this film is setting up so much for the future of the MCU. I mean, they've hardly released a poster yet. Cinemas have been using fan-made posters to promote the film, so I do find that quite hilarious. But one thing is for sure, this film is going to be huge. It's probably too early to be predicting box office numbers, but I reckon this film will probably be in the top 5 highest grossing films of all time. I guess we'll have to see. But I think that is how Spider-Man No Way Home will set up the multiverse for the future of the MCU. But anyway, that is today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Comment down below your thoughts of the trailer and predictions. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this one. Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed. And I'll see you next Friday.